So, all right, Counselor. The Southern District seems as important as Mueller as it relates to President Trump. Why?
At this point, Dominic, it's my view that the Southern District in the long term is a far greater threat to Mr. Trump than the Mueller probe. And the reason for that is that the jurisdiction that Mr. Mueller has and the ability to investigate that Mr. Mueller has is very much constrained by he's got very limited jurisdiction to investigate the Russia investigation and matters relating to Russian tampering in the election. He can't investigate things like insurance fraud, tax fraud. That's not in his jurisdiction. The Southern District, however, has no limits on its jurisdiction to investigate. It can investigate Mr. Trump forever for anything. And of course, they have seized thousands of documents from Mr. Cohen's office. They have Mr. Cohen to guide them through those documents. They have Alan Weisselberg to guide them through any misdeeds that occurred at the Trump Organization. So the Southern District has a great deal more gunpowder to come at Mr. Trump with in the long run than Mr. Mueller does.
Now, talk to me, Counselor. You worked in this office. Talk to me about the independence of the Southern District.
There has always been a real sense of pride at the Southern District in its independence. It has always prosecuted some of the biggest, most important cases in the country. The Rosenbergs, for example, Whitaker Chambers, the Sheikh. So many, monumental cases have been prosecuted here that over the years there has built up a confidence in itself and a willingness to be independent of the Department of Justice. That to some degree was trimmed back in the second Bush administration, and it is, in my opinion, less an independent operator now than it was before that time, but it still carries a great deal of pride in itself and is far more independent, I think, than most United States attorneys' offices.
This is my final question, when they subpoena federal prosecutors, inauguration records, what does that say to you, Counselor?
One thing I'd like to say in follow-up to your last question I just thought of, and a very good indication of its independence was the remark by Acting Attorney General Whitaker that, quote, they need some adult supervision down there in the Southern District. I can't think of a better demonstration of the independence of the office than to have the Attorney General be complaining that they need better supervision, right?
That's a good point. When they come after inauguration documents, what does that mean?
That means they will serve subpoenas. They will ultimately subpoena witnesses to the grand jury. They clearly already have very damaging witnesses to interview about the inauguration committee. Remember, Rick Gates, who has a cooperation agreement with the government, was in charge of that. He can guide the Southern District to whatever crimes, if there are crimes, occurred in connection with the inauguration committee. They have Maria Butina is a cooperator. She attended the inauguration balls and probably knows something about Russian contributions to the inauguration committee. So they already have witnesses who can lead them in the direction of any problems, if there are any, and they can serve subpoenas, they can gather documents, they can review bank records, and pretty soon they can make a case if there's one to make there.
Can the president be indicted?
Well, Dominic, there's a great deal of debate on that topic in the legal community. On two prior occasions, the Office of Presidential Counsel has written memoranda opining that a sitting president cannot be indicted while he is sitting. But there is no express prohibition on an indictment in the Constitution. And several legal commentators have expressed the view that if Donald Trump committed a crime to get the office of president, it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't be indicted for that crime. It's also true, Dominic, that even if the federal government couldn't indict President Trump, state's attorney general could. There's clearly no constitutional prohibition on that. And as we know, the New York State Attorney General's office, for one, has a very active investigation of the Trump Foundation, which could result in an indictment of the president, perhaps. And we know that the district attorney's office is very actively investigating Mr. Manafort, and that may lead to evidence of that could lead to an indictment of Mr. Trump, in theory at least. So he could be indicted by someone.
I know, I remember the question again. The independence, just quickly, Counselor, talk to us about the independence of the Southern District. And aren't they reined in completely by the Justice Department?
The Southern District has a long history of independence. It's sometimes referred to in the trade as the sovereign district of New York. I know that during the Bush administration there were attempts to rein it in, and I think some of them were successful, but I think it remains true that this district, which has had so many high-profile cases and has sort of acquired through the prosecution of those cases so much respect in the legal community, that it carries a gravitas and a weight that gives it some independence. And of course, the best indication of that I can think of, Dominic, is the remark by Acting Attorney General Whitaker that those folks down in the Southern District could use some adult supervision. That's an indication that he believes they're acting independently. So there you have it.